Alright guys, so let's finish off sales tax. First things first, price, realize we need to make that a floats for our different, because our prices are going to have decimals. Now let's create our next class. So we can come over here, and we're going to create this new file from the command line. We're going to call it touches the command for making a new file, print receipt 2.rb. So we're going to call the file, and let's open that in Sublime. Okay, and we know we're going to need this in our product class, so let's require that. Okay, so now whatever functionality we put in here will be available in sales tax. Alright, well, let's start out by creating the class. So this class, what it's going to act as is our receipt for our different products that we create. And it is going to have a class of receipt, and we are going to initialize the data over from this class. Did I spell that right? It looks right. With an empty array of list. And then we are going to create another method called add to receipt, which is going to take an argument of item, which will be our object that we create from our product class, and we are going to add it to list. So we're going to take our object that comes over, and we're just going to use this shovel method, which sticks it into the @list empty array. Okay, now let's end that there. And so what we are also going to need is to create our attribute accessor methods. So let's take item name, let's take price, let's take exempt. If we want it, we can use it. Imported and tax. Let's save that. Actually, I like that. Separate it a little bit differently. Okay, so let's go back to add to receipt, and we are going to take item and call our method from sales tax, or well, for our sales tax file, our product class, called calculate tax. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add up the prices of all the items that we pass in, and we're going to get a total price for those items. So let's create a variable called price total, plus or equal to the different items that we pass through and their prices. And we're going to create a variable for that and initialize. And we're going to set that equal to 0 by default. And then we're going to do the same thing for tax total. I'm going to change that. Alright, that's fine. Plus or equal to item.tax. Let's set that up here. Tax total. And a default of 0 as well. And then we're going to take a grand total of our price total and total tax, find out how much we really spent at the store. price total plus, actually we're not actually going to be having each one of these, plus tax total. Great. So what this method's doing is it's taking the items that we passed through, it's pushing them into our list array, and then we're calling the calculate tax method that we have here to get our tax, and we are going to add up the prices for all of our items, the tax individually for all of our items, and then combine the two, the tax plus the price total. And then we are going to actually have another method that outputs all of this, and we're going to call that method print list. And print list is going to take our array and iterate over it, and let's call it product. I was going to call it item, but we already have something called item. Let's not confuse anybody. And let's say it's going to put, well, we can put each item, right? So let's do hashtag item dot item name. So we're using string interpolation to get the contents of item name for each item. Oh, actually, shoot. We're calling this product. So that's what you pass into the string interpolation when you're iterating over it. You pass in the block that it's going through for that particular item. And let's just also pass in the product.price. And we're going to leave out the exempt and imported stuff now. Then we're going to end that. Then we're also going to print out all of our price totals, tax totals, and grand totals. So let's say subtotal and call on our instance variable. And we could call this tax total. That should be caps. Equal to tax total. Alright, that's what we're calling that. That's what we're calling that. Looks good. Now let's do the last one for grand total. Oh. Puts, and we can end the method. So our print list method is going to iterate over every object in the array. It's going to print out each item name and each item price. We're calling it product name, or product.item name and product.price. And then it's also going to print out all of our subtotal, tax total, and grand total. So let's try running this program. We're gonna also have a, what did we do in our example? We did a book, and we did I think we did a CD, right? Yeah. So let's do a CD also. Call CD is equal to product.new, and the CD that we're gonna have is enema of the state. The first CD from Blink-182 that I ever bought, and that costs, let's say, $17, and it is not exempt, nor is it imported. No, it's not. Okay, so now we have two different instances of product, and we've initialized the data that we want with that. And because we did not pass in a tax, it's going to default to 0 until we calculate it. And now let's do some stuff with receipt. So we're going to call new receipt is equal to receipt.new, and we we are going to call new receipt, and we're going to call on our method add to receipt. And then we're going to pass in our book object as the parameter, and then we're going to do that again for CD. Oh. Okay, so we've now passed in both book and CD into our add to receipt by using the add to receipt method and passing into our list empty array. And now we are going to print it out. So let's do puts new receipt dot print list. Okay, so we have our program. Let's take a quick look through, see if anything jumps out as maybe might return an error. To receipt, print list. We're requiring name. Okay, let's see how this works right now. That. Clear this for now, and let's try running sales tax 2. Okay, so so actually there's a method inherent in Ruby that will actually round these to, I believe, the nearest 2 decimal points. I think it rounds up if it's greater than 5 and rounds down if it's lower than 5. I could be getting that slightly wrong, but let's call that on in our program so that we don't have those crazy long totals there. Okay, so as we can see, we outputted our item name and our item price for each of our objects, and then it added them, and it added the tax, and it returned to us a grand total. So that program was a little bit more, there's a little more to it than some of the last ones. You know, I wanted to incrementally make the programs a little bit more robust. I don't know if there's any extra additional complexity necessarily, but as your programs get bigger, they inevitably become more complex and more difficult to maintain. So you want to try to design them well from the beginning, but you know, continue to practice this one. Try to build it on your own as much as possible. Try to understand everything that's going on. Ask questions in the questions forum, and you know, I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial.